Hey everyone, it's Phil Key from Night Owl Films. Welcome, thanks for tuning in. Been doing a catch up on horror films over recent weeks, and I'm noticing a trend that doesn't seem very cool. A lot of cheap and nasty horror films are getting praised as if they are better than what they really are. And I know people say, oh, well, you get that all the time. By the way, spoiler alert coming up, I was watching The Terrifier 2. Seen the first one, didn't mind it, thought I'll watch the sequel, see what it's like. I could not believe how cheap and nasty it was. Long, far too long. And when you're watching a film like that, you kind of notice a lot of things that they haven't hidden. For example, I think it's in the bathroom scene, one of the actors gets pushed against what is meant to be a solid wall. The wall visibly moves on camera. You can't not see it. It's embarrassing to see. And when you look at it, surely you could have reshot that or found another shot to use. It's clear as day. You can't miss it. I thought that's highly embarrassing. A mime for the killer, you can only do so much with a mime. And after about 45 minutes, it was just very much, is anything going to happen apart from him, this character Art, doing mimes all the time? The way the kills happen, they are so cheap and nasty, they don't even look real. It's so slapstick, you'd actually think college students had made it, because without sounding like a bit of an a-hole here, there is professional standards and then there's just cheap and nasty. When I watched The Terrifier 2, I could not believe how cheap and nasty it was. And the storyline, what the hell? It's gone from being a normal human being to some sort of possession now. Makes no sense. It got a cinema release, don't have a clue how. People are praising it, saying it's better than any horror film they've ever seen. No, it's not. It's one of the worst horror films out there ever made. And it's kind of worrying that people are hyping them up and exaggerating them on purpose, saying, oh, this film's brilliant. No, it's not. And I came across another film, again, spoiler alert, Speak No Evil. The storyline of it, clever, however, very naive. No parent with common sense would have allowed the ending to have happened the way it did. You would fight back, you would do something, you would not just sit around twiddling your thumbs saying to yourself, oh well, we're just going to let our daughter get kidnapped and possibly something else done to her, then we're just going to let ourselves be murdered. The storyline, it was so ridiculous, and people will say, well, that's the storyline. It was silly. There was no common sense to it. It's as if these stories are being written with the idea that, how do I put this, that we as humans don't have the ability to fight back, the fight or flight mode. And when you watch films like that, it's like, I can't help but think, if that's meant to be a horror, you might as well say it's a parody of something, because it's absolutely ridiculously laughable how stupid the storyline was. And again, it has been praised as being a really good psychological horror film. Last time I checked, if your family's being threatened, you fight back in some way or shape or form. You do not allow yourself and your child to end up the way they did in that film. And when you see people worshipping these films and praising them, you take a step back and you think, it's not about everyone's different. It's not about everyone's entitled to their own opinion. When these films that are meant to be horror, meant to scare you, psychological or non-psychological, are so cheap and tacky and nasty, you question, is this what we are in for the next few years? Films that are just laughable and you're calling them horror. Don't insult the horror genre, please don't. A lot of people have said, art's the best killer they've ever seen. Okie dokie. You think that? It's a mime. You can only do so much with a mime. It gets boring after a while. And then obviously the new Scream films come out as well. They should never have let Nev Campbell go. Obviously, we will never know the full story behind it. That's down to the producers, the directors, the studios, and Nev Campbell herself. We will never know the full true story. However, when it's obvious that they are really getting desperate for the attraction from the fans to come forward by using actors that people have never even heard of to promote the film, using ridiculous memes, it's embarrassing to see. And there seems to be a shift where how horror films were made and should be made still is being knocked down the stairs, and then the cheap and nasty stuff that was seen today, i.e. Terrifier 2, Speak No Evil, Scream, it seems to be as if we're edging towards entertaining an audience that is deluded to the extent that you could put a cup of tea in front of them and they would say, oh, there's probably poison in that. Have you poisoned it? Why? Why would you think that? Oh, well, you've given me a cup of tea. It might have poison in it. Right, okay then. Horror films are meant to scare you. And when you see a bathroom wall move when someone's being attacked, it takes the experience away from the film straight away. It's like, wow, the wall's just moved. Terrible. Not good. Why couldn't you just hide it or reshoot it? I don't know. The good thing about the Terrifier 2, however, the actress at the end and her brother, those two are going to go far. They have talent. They're the only reason I continued watching the film. I felt they knew their character. They delivered. I was engaged. I was entertained. I wanted to know more. Don't want to know more about art. Didn't want to know about the mother. It's just poor writing, half of it. Minimum effort, as they say. And I know people will probably be saying in this video now, I'd love to see you try it. I do try. And if there's one thing I've learned is, if you can get rid of it, or hide it, or remove it off screen, just do it. They didn't do that with the Terrifier 2, and it looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks silly. And to think that people are praising that, well, it's unprofessional, quite frankly, because if you're going to praise films with deliberate mistakes just left in, well, not so much as deliberate, but it's been deliberately left in, that's not professional, then, is it? You're just going down the amateur wormhole. And with Speak No Evil, it was more of the fact that I thought, right, these parents are going to fight back. There's going to be some sort of, build up the tension, some sort of climax. No. The killers won. I thought, nah, that's absolute garbage. Human beings don't act like the way you've made them act. And yeah, you get some people that probably wouldn't fight back. Those characters' personalities came across as strong. And then towards the end of the film, it was just as if you were watching two completely different characters. It just made no sense. And as I said with Scream, they are getting so damn desperate for the media coverage that it's just obvious that they need Nev Campbell back. And I know there's a lot of speculation as to what's going on with that. It is obvious she has walked away. There is no doubt about that. The marketing and advertising techniques that have been used, they have never used these before, and that is the giveaway that their leading character should have had some sort of place in the film. They should have found a way to compromise, but they didn't. And now they're saying they're going to come out with more, and you just think to yourself, you know what, just leave it be. The ruined Jeepers Creepers remake, that was ruined. They've brought out Terrifier 2, Speak No Evil. Horror films are meant to scare you, and as of the moment, they're just scarily bad. And when you come across It's even harder when you come across fans in person, when you're out and about and you bump into people who are film fans, or you see a Terrifier tattoo and you get talking to them briefly, and they sat there or just stood there saying, "Oh yeah, it's brilliant, one of the best horror films ever made." I say, well, you do realise this doesn't make any sense, this doesn't make any sense, that doesn't make any sense. You could see this on screen, you could see that on screen. It wasn't entertaining. It was very cheap and nasty. And they just throw it all back in your face. Or, what do you know? The usual cancel culture, go and be negative elsewhere. When people say that to me, I normally say, so you're happy to accept rubbish? And they say, well, it's about an opinion. I don't remember any horror films made in the last 10 years where a piece of set moves on camera and it is left on film on purpose, or where the characters seem to change personalities within 2 minutes of the film, or where the gore is so damn fake it looks like you've just been to the local supermarket and you've pumped it out of something. I'm sorry, but that is not horror. It is just cheap and nasty. And when these films are getting a release on the cinema, oh, no thank you, not for me. Some people might enjoy it, and that's the scary thing. I think these people some of them are deluded to think that, oh yes, that's a brilliant film, let's keep going that way. No, thank you. And these are the reasons why people, when it comes to online streaming, are kicking off, because these films are being put on paid for platforms, the rubbish. So people are either password sharing or cancelling subscriptions, then they're going to pirate. And then when you go on social media, the films that are rubbish on the paid for streaming services, social media are bragging it up. Oh yes, the Terrifier 2 is brilliant. No, it's not. Oh yes it is, yes it is, yes it is. And then people are getting pulled into it. And then when you watch it, it's like, wow, is that how stinking bad the material is? That people are actually just boycotting Netflix because of the rubbish they're buying. The same rubbish that people on social media thinks is glorious and the best thing they've ever seen. It's a scary world when you think about it that way. And in closing, horror is a very, very difficult nut to crack. You've got to do it right. If you're going to scare the audience, if you want them to talk about it to their mates and their families, if you want them to remember it, if you want to spread through word of mouth, you've got to make it special. You've got to give it its unique selling point. The Terrifier 2's, I think the only unique selling point is that it was popular with a lot of people who seem to like very poor quality films. And quite frankly, well, yeah, you've probably already guessed the rest of it. As always, guys, thank you for tuning in. Take it easy and take care of yourselves.